Have you ever played a game that changed your life forever? Maybe it's the game you and your siblings played growing up. Maybe it was the game you and your friends bonded over for years. Or maybe the game was your escape from reality. Regardless of the reason, everybody has a game they connect with on a more personal level than others. And today, that's exactly what I want to talk about. The game that changed my life forever. The Legend of Zelda.
Link, is that you?
Get the fuck away from my sword!
That was a good one.
The Legend of Zelda was released on February 21st, 1986 for the Famicom Disk System in Japan, and on August 22nd, 1987 for the Nintendo Entertainment System internationally, with it being the first installment in the Zelda series. The game was directed and designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, with it originally being created as a launch title for the Famicom Disk System. The inspiration behind the game's creation actually formed from Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood memories of exploring the countrysides and hillsides around his home in Kyoto. He also wanted the game to include some sort of treasure hunting. So he took inspiration from media that conveys a sense of adventure, an example being Indiana Jones. When coming up with inspiration for the story, Takashi Tezuka wanted it to include a fairy tale setting. So to pull this off, he took some inspiration from Lord of the Rings. The game was developed simultaneously with Super Mario Bros., with the two games interchanging models from time to time. For example, did you know the Chain Chomps and Fire Bars were originally created for Zelda and not the Mario series? Although some of these swaps would make their way into the Zelda series eventually. The game was also developed using a heavily modified version of the Super Mario Bros. Engine, which I find to be pretty interesting. Now, The Legend of Zelda is a series that is famous for its music. Nearly every game has at least one song you cannot get out of your head. One of these songs is the title theme, and funny enough, it was almost something completely different. When working on the title theme, composer Koji Kondo created a rearrangement of Maurice Ravel's Bolero, and it almost made its way into the final game. That is, until developers found out the song was still under copyright laws, causing Kondo to have to change it. Due to time constraints, Kondo created the new title theme in a single night, giving us one of the greatest songs in gaming history. When coming up with a name for the game, Miyamoto wanted to call it The Legend of Something, but couldn't figure out what to call it. And that's when one of the team members suggested Zelda, inspired by the name of the author, F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife. And if you don't know who F. Scott Fitzgerald is, just try to remember that terrible book you had to read in high school. And the rest was, as they say, history. The Zelda series would go on to sell millions of copies and warm the hearts of millions for years to come. Well, enough with the yapping, let's finally start the game and find out why it matters so much to me and so many others. Long ago, Ganon, Prince of Darkness, stole the Triforce of Power. Princess Zelda of Hyrule broke the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and hid them from Ganon before she was kidnapped by Ganon's minions. Link, you must find the pieces and save Zelda. We then get a list of treasures we can find on our journey, which we'll talk more about later. From here, we can pick our name and officially start the game. Like the title screen story explains, we play as a boy named Link, who must find the 8 pieces of the Triforce hidden around Hyrule to defeat Ganon and ultimately save Princess Zelda. The game is structured around tile-based movement, like most games at the time, meaning you can only move in the 4 cardinal directions. Most of the time you'll see Link from this top-down perspective as you play through the game, but this can actually change depending on where you are. These staircases found in dungeons, for example, change the game to a 2D perspective, similar to what you'd see in a Mario game, which I find to be pretty cool. Most of your time in Hyrule will be spent in the overworld, which acts as a main hub for the game and is full of different environments to explore. The best part about it is just how non-linear it is. You are free to explore everything in nearly any order you like, which gives you a great sense of freedom. Even though this is a common thing in games nowadays, it wasn't so normal back then. I mean, even Nintendo was skeptical about the whole idea. When The Legend of Zelda was released in America, they actually added extra hints and tips in the instruction manual to keep players from becoming frustrated and giving up. While you can explore anywhere, it might not be the best idea. One of the first things you'll notice on your journey are the enemies roaming around, as there's very few areas in the game without them. Each screen in the overworld and each room in the dungeon are pre-configured on which enemies will be there and how many there are, which makes it a little bit easier to get around. If you know something dangerous is in a certain area, it might be better to avoid it for the time being. The enemies in the overworld range in difficulty based on their location on the map, while in dungeons, the enemies get more difficult the higher the level. I also felt it was important to note that enemies in the dungeon are completely different from the enemies found in the overworld, keeping the game feeling fresh. You also may have noticed that there are some blue variants of certain enemies. These aren't anything too special, they are just stronger versions of their counterpart. As you defeat these enemies, you may have also noticed that they drop certain items. Most of the time, you will either get health back or rupees, which is the currency used in Hyrule. However, if you're lucky, you can even get bombs, or the ability to stop time on the screen you're in, which is very helpful when you're in tight scenarios. There aren't just monsters in Hyrule, you can also find some humans. They're usually hidden in certain caves and dungeons and will help you with your journey. Most of the time, that is. You can find the old woman who gives you useful information and health potions, the merchants who will sell you useful items to use, and the old man who is nice, but also a pain in the ass. Remember how I said most of the time? Sometimes he'll give you a new item, like a sword or an extra heart container, which increases your overall life. Or other times he'll turn you into a chronic gambling addict. Come on, baby.
Fuck!
He also likes to take your money if you blow up his front door, but I mean, come on, it's a literal rock. How the f is this a door in any way, shape, or form? Speaking of blowing up random rocks, let's discuss the many secrets found in the overworld. You probably already figured there'd be secrets. It is a Zelda game after all. Only issue here is how cryptic it can really be. This isn't like the newer entries in the series where you can kinda tell something's there. They tell you nothing. Maybe there's something under that tree, or behind that rock, or underneath this statue, or maybe even underneath this lake. Yeah, I wasn't joking. There's stuff hidden everywhere, and they expect you, the player, to figure it all out on your own. I mean, did Nintendo really expect you to burn every tree or try to blow up every single rock? I feel bad for any of you old heads watching, because if I tried playing this without the internet, I probably would have broken something. But luckily, I was a mistake, born at the perfect time to play this game with the help of internet guides, which is the equivalent of using a big-ass roadmap to find your way around.
Where the f are we going?
I told you we were going. Hold on, actually, I honestly don't even remember myself.
But what are you doing?
Jokes aside, the maps online are extremely helpful and make the game much more enjoyable for newcomers. Once you actually start uncovering these secrets, you can find dungeon entrances, both the helpful and unhelpful residents of Hyrule I mentioned earlier, teleportation spots, and even these moblins that I guess switch teams and give you free rupees. Now I think this would be the perfect time to talk about Link's equipment. When you first start out, all you're given is a wooden shield and a sword found in this super obvious cave. The sword is your main source of damage dealing. Not only is it good at close combat, but it's also a great thing for hitting enemies far away. When Link's full health, his sword actually fires a beam out of it, making it really useful for far-range engagements. However, taking damage gets rid of this effect. You can also get sword upgrades as you progress through the game, causing it to do increased damage. The wooden shield you start out with isn't the best as it doesn't block all projectiles. Stuff like fireballs and swords can't be blocked. Luckily, this can be upgraded for the magic shield, allowing you to now block everything you need. In terms of armor, you can buy the blue ring from a shop and eventually find the red ring, which allows Link to take less damage from hits. The red ring is found in the final dungeon of the game, so you won't be having it for that long. But the blue ring can be bought pretty early on, so make sure you grab it ASAP. Trust me, it helps. Link can also get the power bracelet, which allows him to push rocks around in the overworld, revealing secrets. Lastly, you can also find lots of new weapons and useful tools inside the dungeons, which is a great way to move on to this next section. In total, there are 9 different dungeons for you to explore, with the first 8 needing to be completed before entering the final one. The dungeons you must complete are the Eagle, the Moon, the Manji? Yeah, so before you freak out, let me explain. This symbol is actually a Buddhist symbol called the Manji, and it is meant to represent peace, strength, and good luck. During World War II, the Nazi Party flipped this symbol, making it represent the complete opposite: hatred and misfortune. The manji is still used in media nowadays, and I can guarantee you it still confuses some people who don't know, so I felt it was very important to bring up. Now let's get back to the dungeons. You then have the snake, the lizard, the dragon, the demon, and finally the lion. Well, this is the order they are numbered in. You can complete them in almost any order you want. Just like the overworld, the beauty of the dungeons is the non-linearity of them. You want to complete Dungeon 3 first? Go ahead, but it's not going to be easy. However, I do want to mention that some dungeons need specific items to access them, so you may not be able to do them right away. Inside some of the dungeons, there's also some problem solving you have to do. Sometimes to reach a certain room, you may need to bomb a wall, push a block, or find a key that's hidden somewhere you didn't look yet. Each dungeon has a map, compass, and at least one dungeon item in them. The map allows you to see every room in the dungeon except for the hidden ones, giving you a better idea of where to go. The compass shows where the final room is located, which is helpful if you get lost. This is indicated with a glowing box on the map. And finally, the dungeon item is an important item that is found within each dungeon. These are usually extremely useful weapons or essential items needed to complete the game, so make sure you always grab these. Once you get near the end of the dungeon, you'll start to hear growling from the final room. And this is where you'll be tasked with a boss fight. Usually these aren't too bad, but as you progress through the levels, these boss fight enemies become monsters you can find in normal rooms, so make sure you know how to deal with them. After defeating each boss at the end of the dungeon, you're also gifted a heart container. After grabbing that, you can get the piece of the Triforce. After collecting all the final pieces of the Triforce, you can make your way to Death Mountain, which is the final level if the name didn't give it away. And holy fuck, this is a big dungeon. Death Mountain is truly a test of your patience. It is full of the hardest enemies in the game with plenty of mini boss battles within. One of the dungeon items found in here is even required to beat Ganon, that being the Silver Arrow. Definitely use a guide for this one, that is if you value your sanity. Once you die a few times and reach the final room, we can start our fight with Ganon. Ganon likes to go invisible and teleport around the room, shooting fireballs as he goes. All you have to do here is dodge the fireballs and hit him with your sword a bunch of times, which is dependent on which sword you have. Once you hit him enough times, you'll see him turn into this shade of red, which means this is your chance to defeat him. Here you must grab your bow and shoot him with the Silver Arrow, when this happens. Once you finish the game, you have an option to start a second quest, which is very similar to the original. However, this time the dungeons are completely rearranged and in different locations. Items are found at different spots as well, and even the enemies are stronger. Funny enough, you can actually play the second quest without beating the first, just by making your name Zelda on the name selection screen. Interestingly enough, when you complete the second quest, the game says End of the Legend of Zelda 1, meaning they must have had plans for a sequel from the very beginning. This game may be almost 40 years old, but it transformed my life forever. I played it at a time in my life when I felt lost, misunderstood, and trapped, with my favorite escape being video games. This was the first game in the series I ever played, and I'll always remember how I felt playing it for the first time. It was freeing, adventurous, and most importantly, beautiful. And no, I don't mean the graphics. For me, it was the message. The message the Zelda series screams more than anything else. Freedom. Every single one of us has the ability to do literally anything, so why not shoot for the stars? Shortly after finding the Zelda series, I worked on myself, picked up more hobbies, made lots of new friends, and most importantly, was happy. With not only myself, but the world around me. Ask that person out, go on that trip you've always wanted to go on, accomplish your dreams, and most importantly, stay alive. You're here for a short time. Make sure you make the most of it. As always, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.